don't know what to make of that vice presidential debate last night. You tell me.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Welcome in. It's great to have you aboard. That vice presidential debate was pivotal in this election. Until like tomorrow when you forget all about it. We'll check in with another bright mind from Brown University International and Public Affairs. Professor Richard Arenberg will be my solo guest this evening as we kind of break this whole thing down. Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you aboard. Thanks so much for tuning in to my state of mind, which these days is as stressed as yours is with this presidential race. It will be over soon, right? It will be over. Of course, if Donald Trump loses, he's going to build a network and haunt Hillary Clinton and us for the rest of our lives. So I'm trying to figure out what I'm really wishing for come November. Let's go to the headlines and the rundown, I guess, or I don't know. It's not really the rundown. It's kind of the headlines. I don't know. I'll use both cameras. Tim Kaine and Mike Pence step into the spotlight. All right. That's what the Washington Post took from it. Oh, and then they took this, unsatisfying proxy war. Meaning they were unsatisfied. There were some people that were satisfied. I don't know if it was unsatisfying. And did they clash sharply over their running mates? Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say that. Let's take a CBS roundup of the event, and then we'll get right into the conversation.
The two vice presidential candidates say they're feeling confident about their performance during last night's first and only vice presidential debate.
And it was the fastest 90 minutes in showbiz.
Tim Kaine brought up negative comments Donald Trump made on the campaign trail as a strategy to keep Mike Pence on the defensive.
When Donald Trump says Mexicans are rapists and criminals, I can't imagine how you could defend that.
While Pence said it was Clinton, not Trump, who has run an insult-driven campaign.
She said that half of our supporters were a basket of deplorables. She said they were irredeemable. They were not America.
The debate was often contentious, with one pundit calling it a bickerfest. Tim Kaine was viewed as the more aggressive of the two, interrupting Pence multiple times. But that aggressive nature hurt Kaine, according to a focus group of undecided voters who were watching.
His demeanor and constant interruptions undoubtedly came across as just too much for viewers. Mike Pence was all the things that Donald Trump was not in his debate. He'd clearly studied, and he was unflappable pretty much in the face of all those interruptions.
Now the attention shifts back to Trump and Clinton as the two will have their second of 3 debates this Sunday.
All righty, welcome in Professor Arenberg. Pleased to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Let me not feed you my thoughts. You feed me yours.
Yeah.
Give me your zero-based take from last night's thing.
Well, the first thing I would say before we get too wound up in who beat whom about what is that there's a sense in which both of them met the prime objective, which with the vice presidency is always do no harm. So there's a sense in which neither Kaine nor Pence hurt the campaign of the presidential candidate on their ticket. Now that said, I thought that Pence was much more effective, at least in the initial stages, that if you put Donald Trump forward as the poster child for being unprepared for a debate, you could put Tim Kaine forward as the poster child for being overprepared for a debate. I think he went into that armed with a whole bunch of attacks on Trump that he wanted to get in, and he just was so wound up at the outset that it became almost too obvious. I mean, if you wanted to reverse engineer his talking points, you could do it just by watching him and say, well, these are the points that he studied.
I think you and I see it the same way. You suggested it's over preparedness. I think there was a disposition that they wanted him to take on, which was to be the pit bull, right, on Donald Trump. And I would sue for malpractice whoever really were the hands-on consultants to Tim Kaine if, in fact, they actually prepared his presentation that way and actually had a mock debate with his demeanor being that way, and didn't say, hey, listen, by the way, you got to settle down a little bit here. Remember, you've got your own legacy, you've got your own resume, you've got your own stuff going on here. You don't want in 10 minutes into the debate to look like some, petulant 14-year-old, and that's exactly what he looked like. It was almost unbearable for the first half hour, wasn't it?
I think that's right. I think a big part of the problem was, simply who the guy is. I mean, he's never been an aggressive attack dog type politician. And I think
for the most part, he's a pleasant guy.
Yeah, that's right.
You ask a pleasant guy to do unpleasant things. I think you're.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Jesuit. This is a guy, and you could see that in moments that both of these guys. There was a sense, really, in which you had the sensation that you were watching two grown-ups debate. In sharp contrast to what the presidential debate looked like.
Yeah, well, style aside, or Tim Kaine's rabidity aside. I mean, he was rabid. It was just so uncomfortable. I think that aside, and as the debate wore on, I think you got a general sense of what, for lack of a better term, a classic presidential level debate would look like.
In fact, I thought by the time they got to the very end, the exchange over abortion and capital punishment was in fact probably a higher level of debate than we're used to seeing really in most presidential and vice presidential.
I agree completely. I thought they were deft in handling each other and then turning to, it was actually, in fact, we've got some of the audio. We'll play some of that coming up in the broadcast a little bit later on. The essential discussion here, though, is, how important is a vice presidential debate? The answer to the question is?
Sometimes it's a little bit important.
Sometimes it's a little bit important.
In other
Most
words,
times it's not important at all.
I'm resisting saying it's not important at all. I mean, I think that for the most part, this event will be largely forgotten by tomorrow or the next day and won't have a significant impact on the course of this campaign. Having said that, there's a sense in which big events have somewhat of an impact. I mean, you could argue, for example, that this stopped the Trump campaign had been bleeding all week, and there's a sense in which this stopped the bleeding. And even if that's true only for a day or two and gives Trump the opportunity to reset, that's a valuable thing, something it would have been hard for him to do for himself, at least until the next debate on Sunday.
I tweeted out last night that I just had a thought. I said this notion that Mike Pence may have stopped the bleeding, because that's all what the talking heads were saying, much like you are. We're all talking heads now. Yes. I said, in a way, though, it may work in the other direction, because you may see Donald Trump back in his action again this Sunday and be wanting for a flip of that ticket. You may be wanting for Mike Pence to actually be the lead person. It may amplify what Donald Trump's not bringing to the table in terms of, presidentiality, all that kind of a thing. I would think for those who said, geez, that Mike Pence handled himself really well, if Donald doesn't, again.
That's a very interesting point, and also just Donald's reaction. He just doesn't like to be upstaged.
He tweeted his tail off during the entire thing. In fact, I've got it here somewhere. I'll find it during the break. I actually retweeted his tweet saying this is a presidential candidate. He called Tim Kaine something, or that he looked like something. What did he call him?
A villain from Batman.
A villain from Batman.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
The guy can't stop himself.
Right.
It's unbelievable. We'll pause here and we'll come back and we'll take some excerpts from the debate and get the professor's reaction to it. Stay with us. But then first, where do you want me to go? We'll go over here. But first, how could I forget that if you need your kitchen remodeled, good save, Kev. If you need your kitchen remodeled, well, right there. Cumberland Kitchen and Bath Design Center. I used them. They were on time and on budget, and I can tell you the process was incredible. Just have them come to your home. It's a no-charge visit. They'll measure while you get it off your chest about what you don't like about your house, and then they'll come back with some drawings that will make you dream about what your house could look like, and then they'll do it on time and on budget, and you will be as happy as me with Cumberland Kitchen and Bath Design Center. Be right back.
He said the problem with nuclear proliferation is that some fool or maniac could trigger a catastrophic event. And I think that's who Governor Pence's running mate is, exactly who President Reagan warned us about.
Senator, that was even beneath you and Hillary Clinton, and that's pretty low.
Mike Pence, exasperated. He, by the way, as a former broadcaster and talk show host, I think he seems to be able to play the role pretty well, right? But, first of all, that didn't make any sense. Kaine said it, so it's even, like, he just said it. So it's not even beneath two other people. One of the people you just named just said it. Look, there are a lot of people that feel that Donald Trump is such a loose cannon that the nuclear code and carrying around the football behind him is something that is worrisome. I don't think Kaine made a mistake saying that.
No, although, again, as we were saying before, he seemed to be reaching for the point.
Yeah, he was reaching for points all day. I mean, Democrats, by their very nature, don't they over-prepare by their very debate nature? I mean, when's the last time a Democrat didn't really either over-prepare or they never under-prepare.
Yeah.
It seems they get the vote out, they over-prepare for debates. Although Joe Biden, I think, in the last vice presidential debate, really did well, doing a little freewheeling. And that's why I think his likability level is so high in America today. Pence got away with something, I thought, during the debate. And I don't have a whole list, but I think, what do you think about this? By the way, I know we've got a major league bug flying around the studio, so if I take a swing or the professor takes a swing at me, it's not personal. We're just trying to nail this thing.
It's all about the bug.
I think Tim Kaine's, almost petulance during the entire thing glossed over Mike Pence not responding to some very accurate accusations that Kaine was making. You agree?
Yeah. No, I think he tried to parry the broader ones, but much of the specific quotes from Trump and so forth, he just kind of either brushed them off with by making a face of some sort, or just saying that's not true, and leaving it at that.
This guy is, Pence is a puzzle to me. Folks say that he might have been upended in a re-election bid in Indiana, that, the getting out was good for him, that he ends up on this national platform. The swallow that he has had to do in this entire campaign for his running mate, the play acting that he's had to embark upon, seems to me to be a very stiff price to pay for this national platform exposure.
I would have thought so going in. I thought much, when he accepted it, I was thinking much the way you're suggesting here. But I think that the way it has played out for him, I think it's made him a national figure in the Republican Party now. He's well established as a conservative. He now has made himself more acceptable to some of the more moderate elements of his own party. And I thought last night that he had one eye firmly planted. I guess that makes him, I don't know, cross-eyed or something. But he had one eye firmly planted on 2020. And that he, in picking and choosing where he was going to defend Trump, I think he was very carefully navigating that so that he was the loyal running mate. He stuck up for him. He didn't say anything wrong. He caused no harm. But at the same time, none of the Trumpisms really kind of rubbed off on him. I mean, I think that was his objective, defend him, but don't get pulled into the mud with him.
Well, I think that's a perfect analysis. But here's the question that I always have. Isn't the very essence, the intrinsic act of being an apologist for Donald Trump, should Donald Trump lose this race, isn't it a credibility problem? Period. Period.
Maybe, but he doesn't ever really seem to get to that level of apology. I mean, he sort of, keeps his hands
He
clean.
just goes back to script, he goes back to
Yeah,
rote, and he
yeah.
tries to wear not only Tim Kaine down, but the interviews that he has done, where I think, I watch a lot of the Sunday morning stuff, and it's not often that I drool over, I wish I had him. But if he was
Yeah,
sitting here,
sure.
let me tell you something. It's really interesting when it comes to media as well. National media seems to always run in second or third gear when confronting these candidates, because they feel like they've got a lot to lose by moving their chips all in. If Mike Pence was sitting where you're sitting, I would say, Mike, earth to Mike. I'm going to ask this one more time, and you can. I mean, there's like 16 things I would take him on with. I mean, Donald Trump would be. It'd be the fiasco of the century. Yeah. But it seems to me on a national level, media just seems to play the game only to a level of acceptable agitation for not having questions answered. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that was his debate prep. He's had a lot of I can't believe it questions where he's exhausted the interviewer, is my point, by just kind of staring and saying, I don't really know what you're talking about, or changing the subject.
But look at where he's coming out of all of this. I suggest he's in a very strong position for 2020. And remember, this presidential election in many ways is an anomaly. If we look back over the history of the last number of decades, the Republican Party in particular is known for nominating the guy who's, and it's always been a guy, whose turn it is next. And he's going to come out of this next in line.
All right. I told you I was going to play some excerpts, but I fibbed. I thought that was a good conversation. When we come back, I'd like to get the professor's perspective on where the candidates and the parties go from here, because both parties have been pretty well roughed up in this thing. Stay with us.
In the wake of Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, where she was the architect of the Obama administration's foreign policy, we see entire portions of the world, particularly the wider Middle East, literally spinning out of control.
When Hillary Clinton became Secretary of State, Governor Pence, do you know that Osama bin Laden was alive?
Yes.
Do you know that we had 175,000 troops deployed in the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Clumsy. Do you know?
Yeah.
Governor, can I remind you that Osama bin Laden was alive? Yeah, this is. It's almost. I think Tim Kaine probably went home and said, "Thank God that's over."
Mm-hmm.
Can he rehabilitate himself, or do you think? Well, let me ask you this: do you think he damaged himself badly last night, just in terms of his own stuff?
Well,
he's going to have some pretty smooth performances.
it wasn't a great night for him.
Should he come out and say, what, by the way, I was a little agitated last night and I was a little over the top? Should he admit that, or is that something you don't do at this stage of the game? Don't draw attention to yourself any more than you did last night.
Yeah, I don't think there's any advantage to prosecuting the vice presidential debate.
Does Hillary call him and say, great job?
She did, or she emailed him.
Allegedly.
Enough. Yes.
Right. Mike Pence says that Trump called him, but reportedly, now of course, everyone's got a pipeline, right? Reportedly, rumors were, headlines today were that Donald Trump was upset with Mike Pence. In what way, shape, or form could he be upset with Mike Pence last night? The guy did his bidding and turned back to the ultimate god of politics, Donald Trump, as much as he possibly could have.
He didn't dig in the way Donald does himself. If you wanted to sum up the presidential debate in 3 words, it would be took the bait. Mike Pence never took the bait. That was, that was what was so effective about him, is that he parried a number of these charges, but without getting pulled down into
I think
it.
Donald's evaluating Pence in a sense that because Pence didn't take the bait, he's a lesser player than Donald Trump?
Yeah,
Because Trump's got kind of a warped ability to analyze these things.
Right. He sees that kind of never back down, never give any ground, all of that. His style is to double down. I mean, when she raised the question of Miss Universe, he answered with Rosie O'Donnell. It came out of nowhere. Pence wasn't doing that sort of stuff, and maybe in Trump's view, he wasn't tough enough.
The winner of this race will most likely be
Hillary Clinton.
And she'll get in with a plurality, not a majority, of obviously the electoral
that's
votes are the electoral college is one thing,
right.
but the popular vote is another.
I think she's in very good shape in terms of the electoral college, by the way.
But governing's a whole other ballgame, isn't
Absolutely.
it? She's going to have a hard time.
Absolutely.
The polish is going to be off, isn't it?
Well, if you take the big view, we have been, since Reagan, since 1980, we have seen our politics in Washington become more and more and more polarized, hyper-partisan. And you can track that almost on a year-by-year basis, so that as bad as it's been in the Obama years, the Clinton presidency, or the Trump presidency for that matter, is going to meet a much higher level of resistance than ever before.
What do you think the House and the Senate will look like?
I think if I'm right and she wins, let's say by 2 or 3 points, that will probably be enough to swing the Senate.
To the Democrats.
To the Democrats, maybe 51-49.
And then we've got the ultimate congressional logjam.
Right.
For 4 years at least, or 2 years at least.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had it, except for 2 years at the beginning of Obama's term, when we had unified government and 60 votes in the Senate and a huge Democratic majority in the House. He was able to get a few things done, although Obamacare was not an easy lift.
I only got a few seconds. Are you
Yeah.
bullish or worried about the future?
I'm a bit of a Pollyanna, so I always look at the positive side. I'm very worried about the future because of what I'm talking about. I don't think it's good for democracy. When the two parties can't even get to the table, that's not great.
Pleasure having you. Please come back.
Great. I enjoyed being here.
Fun. A final word and we come back. Some production downtime for Dan Yorke's State of Mind over the next 3 nights, but some repeat performances. A great conversation on Black Lives Matter tomorrow night. A good debate between the GOP and Democratic spokespeople here in the state Friday night, and Colonel O'Donnell on his retirement from the state police Monday night. And we'll be back with an original show on Tuesday. Thanks for watching. Good night.